I bought a heritage farmhouse in Prince Edward County so my wife and I could finally grow old, watching the apple blossoms bloom every spring. 2 years after she passed, my daughter-in-law called and said, "You're too old to maintain that place by yourself. We've already found buyers who will pay cash. You can live in our basement until we figure out something more permanent. You should be thanking us for handling this." I didn't argue with her on the phone. But when she showed up with buyers expecting to tour their new property, they found something waiting that none of them expected. Before I continue, please subscribe to Shattered Vengeance and write in the comments what time it is where you are right now. The lawyer's office smelled like old paper and furniture polish when I signed the final documents. September sun came through the windows of his office in Picton, warm on my hands as I wrote my name for the last time. Gerald slid the deed across his desk, official and final. "Congratulations, Mr. Baxter. The Hendricks farmhouse is officially yours." I held the deed carefully, like it might dissolve if I gripped too hard. $437,000. 42 years of 12-hour days at the shop in Oshawa, rebuilding transmissions and replacing timing belts until my hands knew the inside of an engine better than my own face. Every overtime shift Ellen had encouraged me to take. Every vacation we'd postponed, saying next year, always next year. Now next year was here, and we owned a century farmhouse on 3 acres with a heritage apple orchard that had been producing fruit since 1923. Ellen squeezed my arm as we walked to the car. I still remember the sound of her laugh that day, how the September light caught the gray in her hair and made it shine silver. "We did it, Robert. We actually did it." The drive from Picton took 20 minutes, winding through county roads lined with vineyards and farm stands, selling the last of the summer tomatoes. When we turned onto our gravel lane and saw the farmhouse sitting there at the end, white clapboard with green shutters, and a wraparound porch that needed new boards in 3 spots, Ellen started crying. That was 15 years ago. We spent the first 2 years restoring everything. I rebuilt the porch myself, replaced every rotted board, sanded and painted, until my shoulders ached. Ellen stripped wallpaper in the bedrooms, chose paint colors with names like Autumn Wheat and Morning Frost, planted gardens that grew bigger every year. We learned to press cider from our apples, sold jars of Ellen's preserves at the county market, made friends with our neighbors down the road. When Ellen was diagnosed, we were standing in the orchard watching a cardinal hop between branches. She'd always loved cardinals. Said they were messages from people who'd passed on. I thought it was sentimental nonsense at the time. The cancer took 14 months. She died in our bedroom upstairs, in the bed we'd shared for 44 years of marriage, looking out the window at her apple trees. That was 2 years ago. I buried her in the county cemetery beside her parents, and I came back to the farmhouse alone. Some days I couldn't get out of bed. Some days I worked in the orchard until dark, too exhausted to think. The grief counselor the hospital recommended said everyone processes differently. I processed by replacing the kitchen floor, by pruning every tree in the orchard until my arms trembled, by sitting on the porch at dawn with coffee and watching the cardinals Ellen had loved. Our son Kevin called every Sunday. "How are you doing, Dad? Are you eating enough? Do you need anything?" The calls were short, 15 minutes at most, and I could hear Patricia in the background sometimes, asking if he was almost done. Kevin lived in Oakville with Patricia and their 2 children. He'd become an accountant, worked for a firm downtown, wore suits I didn't recognize him in. Patricia came from money, her father something in finance. They lived in a house 3 times the size of ours with a mortgage I couldn't fathom. When they visited the farm, which wasn't often, Patricia looked at everything like she was calculating its value. The first conversation happened in March, 6 months after Ellen passed. Kevin and Patricia came for the weekend, which surprised me. They usually only visited in summer, and even then only for a day. Patricia wandered through the house touching things, opening cupboards, looking out windows. Kevin followed me to the orchard while I checked the trees for winter damage. "Dad, Patricia wanted me to talk to you about something." A branch had split during an ice storm in January. I examined the damage, calculating if it could be saved or needed to come down. "Dad, are you listening?" "I'm listening." "Have you thought about what comes next? With the house, I mean. You're 66 now. This is a lot of property for one person to maintain. I've maintained it fine for 2 years. But it's going to get harder. The orchard alone must be, 40 hours of work during harvest season? And the house, the repairs, the heating costs in winter? Patricia and I have been talking, and we think maybe it's time to consider selling. I stopped examining the branch, turned to look at my son. He had Ellen's eyes, that same soft brown, but they didn't meet mine. Selling the farm. Just considering it. The real estate market in the county is incredible right now. Wineries and vacation properties are going for premium prices. You could probably get 7, maybe 800,000 for this place. That's almost double what you paid. Your mother is buried 10 minutes from here. I know, Dad. I know, but you could buy something smaller. A condo in Kingston, maybe. Closer to amenities, to hospitals if you need them. Easier to maintain. I don't want easier. I want to live in my home, Kevin sighed. I'm just saying, think about it. Patricia knows a realtor who specializes in county properties. She could give you a valuation. No obligation. No, Dad. The answer is no. Don't bring this up again. He didn't bring it up again that weekend. But when they left Sunday afternoon, Patricia hugged me at the door and whispered in my ear, think about what Kevin said. You don't want to be a burden on him when you can't manage anymore. I thought about that word for days. Burden. Like I was something to be carried, to be disposed of when the weight became inconvenient. The second conversation came in June. I was in the middle of spraying the trees for aphids when my phone rang. Kevin. Hey Dad, got a minute? I'm in the orchard. What is it? Patricia's been doing some research on property values in Prince Edward County. Did you know similar properties to yours have been selling for over 800,000? I told you, I'm not interested in selling. Just hear me out. 800,000, Dad. Invested properly. That's enough to fund your retirement for the rest of your life. You could buy a nice place in Oakville, be closer to the grandkids. Be closer to Patricia, I thought, but didn't say. I'd seen how she managed Kevin, how she controlled every decision in their household through a combination of logic and persistence. She'd identified my farm as an asset, and assets needed to be liquidated. Kevin, your mother and I bought this place together. We restored it together. She's buried in this county. I'm not leaving. You're being emotional about this. I'm being clear. The farm is not for sale. A pause. Then his voice changed, harder than I was used to. Patricia thinks you might not be thinking clearly. Grief can affect judgment, Dad. Maybe you should talk to someone before making permanent decisions about your future. I am thinking clearly. The answer is no. Please respect that. We'll talk later. He hung up before I could respond. That night, I sat on the porch with a glass of whiskey, watching the sun set over the orchard. A cardinal landed on the fence post 10 feet away, cocking its head at me. Ellen's bird. I raised my glass to it. They want to sell our home, I said out loud. Turn everything we built into numbers in an account. The cardinal chirped once and flew away. 3 weeks later, a strange car pulled into my driveway. Silver Mercedes. Too expensive for most county visitors. A woman in a blazer got out, carrying a clipboard and a measuring tape. I walked out to meet her, still holding the wrench I'd been using to fix the garden gate. Can I help you? Mr. Baxter. Hi. I'm Meredith Calloway, from Calloway Properties. Patricia arranged for me to come do a preliminary assessment. She said you were expecting me. I was not expecting you, and my property is not for sale. Meredith's smile flickered. Patricia was very clear that you'd agreed to at least hear about the market conditions. Patricia does not speak for me. This is my home. I don't know what she told you, but I have no intention of selling. But I'm already here. Maybe I could just take a quick look around, give you an idea of what you're sitting on. No obligation. Ma'am, I need you to leave my property. Her expression shifted from friendly to calculating. You know, Mr. Baxter, properties like this require significant upkeep. At your age, living alone, it's not uncommon for maintenance to slip. That affects resale value over time. The longer you wait, the less you might get. I took a step toward her. Leave. Now. She left. I watched the Mercedes disappear down the lane, Then I went inside and called Kevin. He answered on the third ring. "Dad, what's up? Why did Patricia send a realtor to my home?" "She what?" "A realtor just showed up. Said Patricia arranged it. Said I was expecting her." A long pause. "Dad, I'm sure there was a misunderstanding." "There was no misunderstanding. Patricia is trying to force me into selling. I want it to stop. I'll talk to her." "Do that. And tell her if she sends anyone else to my property without my permission, I'll have them charged with trespassing." "That's a bit dramatic, don't you?" "No, it's clear. I'm finished discussing this." I hung up and sat at the kitchen table, the same table Ellen and I had refinished together the first summer we lived here. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from anger, the kind of slow, burning anger that builds when someone refuses to hear the word no. I went to my desk and pulled out a notepad, old habit from my years running the shop. Write everything down, document everything. I recorded the date of each conversation, who said what, when the realtor appeared uncalled. Not because I expected to need it, just because precision mattered. The summer passed. Harvest came, and I spent long days picking apples, pressing cider, selling at the market just like Ellen and I used to do. My neighbors, Margaret and Tom Chen, helped when they could. They'd moved to the county 10 years ago from Toronto, retired teachers who'd become family over shared dinners and borrowed tools. In September, Margaret knocked on my door one evening, holding a printed page. "Robert, I need to show you something." I was looking at rental properties for my sister, who's visiting in October, and I found this. She handed me the paper. My hand went cold. It was a real estate listing. My farmhouse, my orchard, my wraparound porch, Heritage Apple Farm Estate. The heading read, "Prime Prince Edward County location, 400-foot frontage, 3-acre lot with producing orchard, Heritage farmhouse with modern updates. Asking price, $869,000. The photos showed every room. The kitchen I'd renovated. The bedroom Ellen had chosen the paint color for. The porch I'd rebuilt with my own hands. There was even a photo of the cardinal feeder I'd hung for Ellen in the apple tree. At the bottom, for inquiries, contact Meredith Calloway, Calloway Properties. Serious buyers only. Seller motivated. I stared at the page until the words blurred. "Robert, are you all right? My house is listed for sale. I didn't list it. I didn't give anyone permission to list it." Margaret's face went pale. "That's fraud." "Yes." I sat down heavily on the porch steps. "That's exactly what it is." Inside, I found more. The listing was on 3 different real estate websites. The description mentioned private viewings available and seller reviewing offers. There was even a note at the bottom. "Rare opportunity. Don't miss this one. Property expected to sell quickly." I called Kevin. He didn't answer. I called again. Nothing. I sent a text. "Call me immediately. This is urgent." He called back an hour later. "Dad, what's going on? Did you know Patricia listed my farm for sale?" "What? No. That's not. She wouldn't." "Well, she did. It's on 3 websites. Asking $869,000. There's a realtor taking inquiries. The same realtor who showed up uninvited in June." "Dad, there must be some explanation." "The explanation is your wife is trying to sell property she doesn't own." "That's fraud, Kevin. That's a criminal offense." "I'm sure it's a mistake." "Let me talk to her." "You've been talking to her. Clearly that hasn't worked. I'm calling a lawyer tomorrow." "Dad, don't overreact. Let me handle this." "You had your chance to handle it." "Several chances. The listing comes down by tomorrow, or I'm filing a police report." I hung up before he could respond. That night, I didn't sleep. I walked through the house, touching the walls Ellen and I had painted together, the door frames I'd sanded smooth, the floors we'd refinished over 3 summers of weekends. Every inch of this place held memory, and Patricia wanted to convert it all to cash, push me into a basement, pretend my 42 years of work and 15 years of love meant nothing. The cardinal visited at dawn, landing on Ellen's feeder. I watched it through the kitchen window, coffee going cold in my hands. The lawyer's name was Helen Dumont. She had an office in Picton, gray hair pulled back severely, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. I brought my notepad, my laptop, and printed copies of every listing. She reviewed everything in silence for 10 minutes. Then she removed her glasses and looked at me. "Mr. Baxter, this is textbook fraud. Your daughter-in-law is listing property she doesn't own for sale, representing herself as having authority to sell, and presumably planning to collect deposits from potential buyers. That's criminal fraud and potentially theft if money changes hands. What are my options? We send a cease and desist immediately. I'll also contact the real estate board because that realtor is either complicit or dangerously negligent. If the listing isn't removed within 24 hours, we proceed with criminal charges through the OPP. And my son?" She paused. "Legally, it depends on his involvement. If he knew about this and participated, he could face charges too." I closed my eyes. "Kevin, my only child, Ellen's son. I just want it stopped. I want my home protected. Then we start with the cease and desist. I'll have it drafted within the hour." The letter went out by registered mail and email that afternoon. I also contacted the OPP non-emergency line and filed an initial report, explaining the situation, providing documentation. The officer, Constable Williams, was professional and thorough. "We see property fraud more often than you'd think," he said. "Usually it's strangers, but family cases happen too. Keep everything documented. If they don't comply with the cease and desist, call me directly." That evening, my phone exploded. 17 missed calls from Kevin, 4 from Patricia. A series of texts, escalating in tone. "Kevin, Dad, what is this? A lawyer letter? Are you serious? Kevin, call me right now. Kevin, this is insane. We were trying to help you. Patricia, Robert, you're making a huge mistake. We can still work this out like family. Patricia, if you pursue this, you'll destroy Kevin. Is that what you want? Patricia, you're a lonely, bitter old man, and you're going to die alone in that house." I read each message carefully, then screenshotted everything and forwarded it to Helen. The next morning, I checked the real estate websites. The listing was still active. I called Helen. "No change." "I'll notify the OPP. We're proceeding with criminal charges." "Understood." I spent that day preparing. I installed security cameras, 3 of them covering the driveway, the front porch, and the back of the house. Motion activated, recording to cloud storage. Margaret and Tom helped me set them up, their faces grim. "If they show up, you call us," Tom said. "We'll be here in 5 minutes." "Thank you. But I'm hoping it doesn't come to that." It came to that. Saturday morning, 3 days after the cease and desist letter was sent, I was pruning dead branches in the orchard when I heard vehicles on the gravel lane. 2 cars. Kevin's Lexus, followed by a white SUV I didn't recognize. I set down my pruning shears and walked toward the house. Kevin and Patricia emerged from the Lexus. She was wearing heels completely unsuitable for a farm, picking her way across the gravel like it personally offended her. From the white SUV came a couple in their 50s, dressed casually but expensively. They looked around with the assessing eyes of potential buyers. "Dad," Kevin's voice was tight, "can we talk inside?" "Who are these people?" Patricia stepped forward, her smile brittle. "This is David and Christine Miller. They're very interested in the property. They've already put down a deposit." "A deposit on my property? That you don't own? That you have no authority to sell?" The Millers looked confused. David Miller stepped forward. "I'm sorry. Is there a problem?" "We were told the sale was proceeding." "There is no sale. This woman listed my home without my knowledge or permission. Any money you've given her was obtained through fraud." Patricia's face flushed. "Robert, stop this. You're embarrassing yourself." I pulled out my phone. "Constable Williams, please. This is Robert Baxter. The individuals I reported for property fraud have arrived at my home with intended buyers." "Yes, I'll wait." Kevin grabbed my arm. "Dad, hang up. We can talk about this." I shook him off. "There's nothing to talk about." I said no. I said it repeatedly. "You didn't listen. Now there are consequences." Patricia was speaking rapidly to the Millers, who looked increasingly alarmed. Kevin stood frozen between us, face pale. The cardinal landed on the fence post nearby, watching with its head tilted. 15 minutes later, Constable Williams pulled into the driveway in his marked cruiser. A second OPP vehicle followed. What followed was methodical and devastating. The Millers confirmed they'd paid Patricia a $20,000 deposit for the property, transferred 3 days ago. They showed bank records on their phone. Patricia claimed it was a family misunderstanding, that I'd verbally agreed to the sale. Constable Williams asked if I had any documentation of that agreement. I have documentation of refusing repeatedly. I have a cease and desist letter she ignored. I have this listing created without my knowledge. There was no agreement. The Millers left first, their faces thunderous, already calling their lawyer. Patricia was informed she was under investigation for fraud and theft over $5,000, that she would need to surrender her passport, that formal charges would follow. Kevin stood watching, saying nothing, his face the color of ash. "Dad," his voice was barely audible. "Don't do this." "I didn't do this." "She did. You helped her." "I didn't know she'd actually." "But you pressured me for months. You sent that realtor. You ignored every time I said no. You made this possible." He didn't have an answer. After the police left with Patricia in the back of one cruiser, Kevin sat on my porch steps. I brought out 2 cups of coffee, habit overriding anger. "The deposit money," he said. "We don't have it. Patricia already used it to pay down our credit line. That's not my problem." "I know." We sat in silence. The cardinal returned, landing on Ellen's feeder, pecking at seeds. "Mom would have hated this," Kevin said. "Your mother would have been furious at what Patricia tried to do. But yes, she'd have hated all of it. What happens now? Now your wife faces fraud charges. The Millers will probably sue for their deposit. You'll need a good lawyer. And you need to decide where your loyalty lies." He looked at me, eyes red. "You're my father. Then, act like it. You watched Patricia pressure me for a year. You participated. You let her treat your mother's home like an asset to be liquidated. I'm your father, but you haven't been my son in a long time." He left without finishing his coffee. The criminal charges proceeded. The Crown prosecutor, after reviewing the evidence, offered Patricia a plea deal. Conditional discharge, 3 years probation, full restitution to the Millers, plus $20,000 in fines. Her real estate co-conspirator Meredith Calloway lost her license and faced separate charges. Kevin called once during the proceedings. "Dad, she's losing everything. Can you drop the charges?" "I'm not the one pressing charges, Kevin. The Crown is." The Millers filed a civil suit. The fraud investigation turned up other properties she'd tried this with. "Your wife is a con artist." "I'm sorry, that's hard to hear." The line went dead. Winter came early that year. I stacked firewood, winterized the orchard, repaired the storm windows. Margaret and Tom had me over for dinner every Sunday. I joined a woodworking class in Wellington, started building birdhouses to sell at the spring market. The grief counselor said I was making progress. I said I was just tired of sitting still. In February, Kevin's name appeared on my phone. I let it ring 3 times before answering. "Dad, Kevin, Patricia and I are separating. She's moving back to Toronto. The legal fees, the civil suit, we had to sell the house. The kids are staying with me, but I'm renting now. A small place in Oakville." "I'm sorry to hear that." A long pause. "Can I bring them to visit? The kids? They've been asking about Grandpa's farm, about Grandma's apple trees." I looked out the window. Snow covered the orchard, the trees bare and patient, waiting for spring. The cardinal sat on the feeder, bright red against all that white. "You can visit. Call first." "Thank you." I didn't say more. There wasn't more to say yet. He came in April, when the apple blossoms were just starting to open. My grandchildren, Sarah and Michael, tumbled out of the car and ran straight for the orchard. Kevin followed slowly, looking at the farmhouse like he was seeing it for the first time. "You replaced the gate," he said. "Needed doing. The place looks good. You've kept it up." "I've had help. The Chens, some neighbors. People who understand what this place means." He nodded, not meeting my eyes. "I was wrong, Dad, about all of it. Patricia convinced me that selling was the practical choice, that you weren't thinking clearly. I wanted to believe her, Because it was easier than standing up to her. It was easier than listening to your father, you mean? Yes. He finally looked at me. I'm sorry. I watched Sarah climbing the fence to get a better look at the orchard. Michael was chasing a chicken that had wandered over from the Chen's property. Sorry doesn't erase what happened. Your mother's home was listed for sale like it was just another property. Strangers came here expecting to tour their new purchase. Patricia called me a lonely, bitter old man who would die alone. I know. Do you? Because those words don't disappear. That year of pressure doesn't disappear. The betrayal doesn't disappear. Kevin was quiet for a long moment. Then, what do I need to do? I don't know yet. Time, maybe. Actions, not just words. Showing up when it's not convenient. Helping when there's nothing in it for you. Learning what your mother tried to teach you about what matters. I can do that. We'll see. We had lunch on the porch. Sandwiches and lemonade. The kids ran through the orchard, climbed trees, collected fallen blossoms. Kevin washed the dishes without being asked. Before they left, he walked with me to the edge of the property, where Ellen's favorite apple tree stood. I used to think you were being stubborn, he said, hanging on to this place, refusing to be practical. Now I understand. This isn't just property. This is your life, Mom's life. Everything you built together. It took you long enough. He almost smiled. I'm my mother's son, slow learner. The cardinal landed on a branch above us, trilling its sharp song. She loved those birds, Kevin said quietly. I know. She said they were messages. Do you believe that? I watched the cardinal hop between branches, red against white blossoms, alive and insistent. I believe she's not gone from this place, whatever that means. After they left, I sat on the porch until dark. The farmhouse stood solid behind me, its white clapboard glowing in the evening light. The orchard stretched toward the county road, trees I'd pruned and tended and harvested for 15 years. Ellen's gardens were starting to show spring green, persistent despite 2 years without her careful attention. The price of protecting all of this had been high. My daughter-in-law faced criminal charges and civil suits. My son had lost his marriage, his house, his certainty. The family Ellen and I had built was fractured in ways that might never fully heal. But sitting there in the quiet, watching the stars emerge over the county I'd chosen for my final years, I couldn't regret the choice. Some things are worth fighting for. Some boundaries can't be crossed without consequence. Ellen knew that. She'd stood up to her own family when they demanded money we couldn't give. She'd taught me that kindness and strength weren't opposites. The cardinal appeared on the fence post one last time, a dark shape against the fading sky. It chirped once, sharp and clear, then flew toward the orchard and disappeared. I raised my glass to the empty air. I'm still here, I said, just like I told them I would be. The farmhouse was quiet. Mine. Earned through 42 years of work and defended through a year of conflict. The apple blossoms would open fully within the week. The pressing season would come in September. My grandchildren might visit again before summer ended. And every morning, the cardinal would return to Ellen's feeder, red against whatever weather came, persistent and present and wild. I finished my drink and went inside to make dinner. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to Shattered Vengeance, and share your thoughts in the comments below. To listen to the next story, click the box on the left. Thank you for watching.